Today, Porsche is certainly one of the most well-known names in luxury sports cars, even if no one quite knows how to say it right. But the story behind this iconic company's creation is not nearly as well known, and it is full of surprises. Before Porsche was the name of a famous car company, it was first the name of a family from Maffersdorf, now a part of the Czech Republic. Anna and Anton Porsche lived in Maffersdorf, and while Anton worked as a plumber, Anna was a stay-at-home mother for her 3 children, including her youngest, Ferdinand Porsche. He was born on September 3, 1875, and from a very young age showed an extreme aptitude for technology and engineering. In fact, it was said that Ferdinand was especially interested in electricity when it was initially installed in homes and businesses around Bohemia. At the time, it was customary for young men to take over the family business when they came of age. However, because of Ferdinand's other interests, he decided to go a different route. It's important to understand that Ferdinand's father and family did not have high hopes for his career in electrical engineering. But it seems that these doubts only fueled the young boy's dreams and ambition. Even though young Ferdinand worked in his father's shop to help, instead of becoming a plumber, he attended the Imperial Polytechnical College in Reichenberg to learn electrical engineering. Fortunately, Ferdinand did well in school and got a job directly after graduating at Bella Egger & Co. Electrical Company in Vienna in 1893. So he moved to the big city to start his life and career. Because of Ferdinand's work ethic, know-how, and natural ability in the industry, he was quickly promoted from entry-level electrician to manager in just a few years. During this time, he continued to further his education by attending the Vienna University of Technology at night, although he never received a degree. Ferdinand's excitement about engineering took a turn in 1897 when, at only 22 years old, he created his first wheel hub motor. And he quickly got a job at the first electric car department in Vienna at Jacob Lohner & Company. At the factory, they built the coaches used by the monarchies of Europe. And just a few years after Ferdinand landed the job, they began building automobiles as well. Ferdinand's design and creation, the wheel hub motor, would finally be used in a real car in 1897. The car was called the Lohner Porsche, and it was a non-transmission vehicle that did exceedingly well at that year's World Fair. This was the first of Ferdinand's many cars to come. While it was certainly a success, the young engineer did not stop there. He continued to design and create new ideas for cars at the factory and tested them by racing the cars himself around a local track. In 1900, he even won a race outside of Vienna in one of his vehicles. After 8 years with Lohner, Ferdinand decided to join another company in 1906 called Daimler as their technical manager. He continued to win races, develop engines and cars, and push the limit on what was considered doable at the time. One of his cars even reached 140 kilometers or 87 miles per hour in one of his races. In 1917, he was named the general manager of Austo Daimler and worked on improving their existing cars, including the Mercedes. By 1924, Ferdinand was considered an absolute success in his industry, and he was even awarded the honorary title of doctor at the Stuttgart Institute of Technology. With years of experience under his belt, Ferdinand Porsche finally started his very own company in 1931. The company was called Porsche, and Ferdinand, alongside his few employees, worked as consultants for other companies designing and assessing motors, engines, and vehicles. However, he continued working on bettering the automobile, and in 1931, he officially patented the torsion bar suspension. Although Ferdinand, of course, went on to change the automobile industry in dozens of other ways, this invention alone would have made him a legend forever. Although Ferdinand was enthralled with racing and racing cars, in the 1930s, he decided to shift his focus and wanted to design and create a car that could be used by the general public for everyday use. So when the opportunity came to design exactly that, a car for the people, Ferdinand was extremely excited. In June 1934, Ferdinand joined the team of engineers selected by the government to create Volkswagen, or in German, the People's Automobile. Ferdinand was elected as the general manager of the project by Hitler himself. But just as they were about to start production, World War II broke out. While the original Volkswagen Beetle was complete and certainly seen as a success during the war, everyone in the German automotive industry, including Ferdinand, had to turn their attention to wartime production, such as tractors, wind generators, tanks, and so on. In 1935, Ferdinand was captured by the French army and held in a prison for almost 2 years. It was said that he armed the German war machine with his creations and was therefore considered a threat, although he was released as there was no evidence that he had participated in the Holocaust. Once released and the war was over, Ferdinand continued to consult for various companies, including Volkswagen, through the Porsche company. But he never actually created a car under his own name before he sadly passed away in 1951. And although Ferdinand Porsche absolutely changed the automobile industry and designed and created parts and entire cars during his lifetime, the true beginning of the Porsche empire did not start until after his death. Ferry Porsche, Ferdinand's son, had been working with his father all his life. He was equally as interested and passionate about automobiles as his father had been, and in fact, when he created his first car by himself, Ferdinand was quoted as saying, "I would have built it exactly the same, right down to the last screw." The first car with the Porsche name was the Porsche 356, and it was designed entirely by Ferry. As many parts were in short supply after the war, the first 356 was built, with many of the parts made from the Volkswagen Beetle. In addition to the parts being in short supply, there was really no money to be used. Ferry Porsche decided to sell his car through the Volkswagen company, and he did not approve production until after the pre-orders had been made. As time went on, parts became more readily available, and with money coming in, Porsche was able to build their own parts, and by the time the car was ready for sale, it was mostly made with its own engines and transmissions. And the next year, they reopened the official factory in Stuttgart, where it still remains today. The 356 proved to be undeniably popular and valuable, and it's recorded that the company sold and produced more than 78,000 of them over the course of 2 decades. By 1964, Porsche was in full swing. Ferry and his son Ferdinand Alexander Porsche created the Porsche 911, which impressed the entirety of Europe, and they continued to improve and prevail as a luxury car brand for the elite when James Dean purchased the 550 Spider. All of their cars were built not only to race, but also to drive through the streets of the city. They were durable, reliable, well-made, fast, and beautiful. It's important to note that through the 1960s, the name Porsche was synonymous with the word car, and Ferry Porsche himself was really the mastermind behind its success. He worked as the chairman of the board and general manager for decades, only stepping down in the 1980s to let his son, Ferdinand Alexander, run the show. In 1972, Ferry believed that the company had outgrown family operations, and he made Porsche a publicly traded company. However, at that time, and until very recently, the Porsche and Piech family remained the major shareholders and still controlled the company. The Piech family was involved as Ferdinand's daughter and Ferry's sister, Louise, married Piech, and therefore took his name. In fact, the Porsche and Piech families were involved in almost every company and aspect of the German automobile industry. Ferdinand Alexander, better known as F.A. Porsche, became the chairman of the Volkswagen company, and Ferdinand Piech, Louise's son, worked for both Porsche and Mercedes-Benz designing cars. So it's safe to say that Ferdinand Porsche's love for the industry was passed on to his children and grandchildren, who continued to work to fulfill their patriarch's dream. Although the two companies have always been closely connected through both their management and even the parts used in each other's cars, Volkswagen and Porsche officially merged in 2011. And while much of the production for both brands is still in Germany, they also work out of Slovakia, the USA, and for some time, Finland. Over the past 20 years, Porsche has continued to succeed in the industry, and its sales seem to be increasing every year. In 2022, the company had an incredible revenue of almost $41 billion, selling more than 300,000 automobiles. The company does well for itself, not only because it produces incredible vehicles, but also because they have been able to keep its cars on the roads and in the races. They continue to create new and better-made vehicles, such as the Cayman, Boxster, Panamera, Cayenne, Taycan, Macan, and even better versions of the original hit, the 911. In fact, the company has even created a hybrid model to compete with the popular Tesla cars that are sweeping the globe. Another interesting aspect of the Porsche business model that has made them so successful is that some of their cars are much more affordable than many of their competitors. Therefore, while you may spend hundreds of thousands of dollars on a Porsche, you can purchase a Macan for only $60,000. 70% of Porsche models that were ever built are still being driven, which clearly shows their quality, as well as how much people truly love to drive them. If you get the chance to drive or even own a Porsche, you will certainly see the appeal of these incredibly made and gorgeous machines, just as Ferdinand would have hoped. Luckily, it doesn't seem that Porsche has in any way changed their dedication to designing and manufacturing some of the best cars in the business, and the world can be grateful to one man, a young son of a plumber, who created this legendary brand. Hungry for another fascinating business story? Click on the following video to hear the crazy story about the poor boy who invented Starbucks.